Okay, hey, welcome. Welcome, good to have everybody here. And I tell you what, if you can hear me, would you just clap your hands one time? Then this must not be hot. Can you hear me back there? Okay. If you can hear me, would you clap your hands one time? If you can hear me, would you clap your hands 2 times? And now do the heebie-jeebie. It's not the heebie-jeebie. Okay, let's see. We have just a few people left standing. I see 4 seats here. I see the pew up here in the front is not reserved for anybody, so feel free to join us. And let me just welcome everybody to our Student Success Provost Forum. We were talking in the back of the room. I think these are starting to become a normal part of who we are, and that is exactly, Lisa Jones, the point of institutionalization. There you are. I was looking all over for you. It's exactly the point of institutionalization. It becomes something that each of us does. It becomes something we do together. It becomes something we talk about straightforwardly, honestly, and celebrate our successes. So let me just remind you what we do. 4 times a year, we have a Provost Forum. This is number 3. The last one will be philanthropy and alternative sources of funding. So welcome back. What do we do here? We start out by taking a look at how we've done over our past several years, but especially in the last year. We take a look at straightforward measures, and on each of your chairs, you're going to see measures that we're looking at around student success that are in our strategic plan around student success. Then we have our leaders, our campus leaders that have primary responsibility for these areas come up and talk a little bit about what's been happening over the last year or so. And one of the sections that I enjoy most personally is then the chance to hear from people, from faculty, staff, students who are actually doing some of the excellent work that's happening so that we can identify with them and think about, that's pretty neat. They're doing a really good job. I wonder, how could I adapt that to my scenario? So we're all in this together. Let me just start off here I talked about the structure of each forum. Let's go to slide 2. And what we usually do is anchor ourselves in the strategic plan and in our promises. All of our promises really are focused on student success, but let's draw attention to the first 2. And the first one is really use the power of scale to change lives and livelihoods. This is really an acknowledgement that there are a lot of people for whom higher education is the key to economic, social, and cultural mobility. And there are a lot of people for whom we serve and a lot more that need us to serve them. Number 2, do it by attracting and cultivating exceptional and diverse faculty, students, and staff who collectively, that's why we're here today, strengthen us. Okay, so these I wanted to bring a special focus on. Slide 3, please. So let's now just jump right into the student success metrics that we're going to focus on. And the first 2, first-year retention, 6-year graduation rate, are some fairly traditional measures. They become pretty important to us. They have, especially over the last 4 to 5 years, because they're also tied at the state level to performance funding. There's some of the key measures for student success in the performance funding criteria. And then for us as a rising institution in preeminence. So establishing preeminence. So we have good news to share there. The third one is really unique to UCF, and that is transfer student success. So with over half of our students in one of our primary, or one of our many, but really powerful ways to provide access to a high quality education, our programs with transfer students are critical to our mission, and we don't always see equity with the students that come in as FTICs. We have our own goal of closing the gap between transfer student success and the students that come in as first-year freshman success. What I would say is, I guess I'll go ahead and share it right now. In first-year retention, I'll just announce so we can give ourselves a round of applause. We have hit, with a little bit of rounding, 90% for the first time in our history. All right, now this is really important because number one, this put us across the line for preeminence, and we won't ever slip back. So we had to be at 90%. That was a really important criteria, so we've reported that. I think for me, though, more personally, we have been bumping and flirting with 90% forever, for almost 10 years. Get close, drop a little, get close, but never, I don't think, below 88%. We've been in that range for years now, and this is kind of a mental barrier. So now that we've broken this, we can move on through it. It's kind of like when you go drive for 6 minutes in a basketball game and you just can't get that shot to fall, and finally it falls, and off you go. Alrighty. So let me just, one of the things that I like to do, in addition to celebrating this collectively, is also celebrate some of the successes of our colleges. So from our handout, I want to just highlight a few colleges that have met or exceeded their targets in first-year retention. And those are the College of Nursing, the College of Engineering and Computer Science, and the College of Optics and Photonics. So as you know, we're all targeting to reach our goals by 2020. Those are colleges that have, this cohort, met their goals. So I just want to give them a round of applause. Okay. Now let's look at six-year graduation rate. So after a dip last year from 70.6 down to 69, which we knew was coming, we knew it as soon as this cohort got through their first year, and first-year retention was unusually low, or lower than other cohorts. And interestingly, hold me accountable to this fact, across the state of Florida, the same phenomena happened for this cohort. I guess I should be also looking at Paige. So some people say it was the hurricane effect, a recession effect, not quite sure. But what we see is that we've rebounded now to 70%, and this is, we pretty much know what these are going to be right now because these are students that we have with us. We see that this will be growing again next year. So our path towards 75% is a steep path. It's an aggressive path, but we're back on a trajectory of increase that it doesn't look like is going to drop off for the foreseeable future. So that's good news. Let me just report, because some of you may have been hearing this, that last year there was a Senate bill that introduced four-year graduation rate as the high-stakes measure in preeminence funding. Was it performance funding as well? Just preeminence, okay. That bill is active again this year, and it looks like it's getting traction. So we've been paying attention over the past year, without creating a strategic goal, to four-year graduation rate. And again, this is a great success from my perspective. We had been hovering at 40% four-year graduation rate for a number of years, and in the last year alone, we increased that by 10% to almost 44%. Now, this is interesting to me. 63% of our FTIC students graduate in 4 years or less. So this is an average, but by far the majority are already okay, all right? Now here's another interesting one. 75%, 3 out of 4, graduate in 4 years in 1 semester. So this is why tuning up summers, making sure we're really clear about prerequisites that may be a barrier that are offered one time a year, all those little things that we could, or big things, that we could tweak. All we have to do is gain 1 semester, and most of our, 75% of our students will be graduating in 4 years. So I feel very confident that we can reach this 4-year graduation rate, just given what we know about our students. Finally, let's look at transfer student success. This is one that I would invite us to focus on as you listen to the rest of today and as you think about your own work. This one is going in the wrong direction. Not rapidly, a little bit. So one of the things we want to do is really think about what we hear about from our transfer student we're going to hear from today, about some of the programs that help us identify pathways to success for students. Really think about those in your own context as we listen today. So with that, I'd like to turn the program over to Elizabeth Dooley and Maribeth Ehasz, who will take it from here.
Good afternoon and hello to everyone. And so we just heard from our provost, and so let me start by saying it truly does take a community, a village to achieve the goals articulated by Provost Whittaker. I often speak about having a shared responsibility when it comes to student success. Every facet of the university matters when creating an ecosystem that enables success for all. Here's what I typically say. Scholarship of teaching and research matters. Relationships matter. Expectations matter. Alignment matters. Continuous improvement matters. Engagement matters. Diversity matters. We are in a place where we can applaud all of our efforts and successes individually and collectively. There's a tremendous amount of effort, and today we're going to focus on 2 areas. So go to my first slide. Am I clicking or someone else is clicking? I'm clicking? Okay, and so this was the slide that shows that when the gears are working in sync, we all center around student success. And none of the gears ever come disconnected because we're working together. So keep that visual in mind. Let's click to the next slide. So today, we decided that we were going to talk about the areas, 2 areas specifically, when talking about investments in student success. And one is technology. Click, please. Go ahead and click all of the technologies. I'm going to walk away because I like to walk. Testing, can you fire me up here? Testing, very good. So look at this slide. So one of the things that you see is myKnight audit, which is a degree audit that really accounts for all of the courses that a student is taking and all of the courses that a student has completed and should take to complete his or her degree. This came on board in spring 2016. myKnight STAR, a predictive analytics, came on board in spring 2016. How close are those 2 dates? Concurrent. Pegasus Path is coming spring 2018, and you'll hear more about that. That's actually a degree planning tool, and it's a map, and we'll talk about that in greater detail. And then we also have the student performance dashboard created by Tom Cavanaugh and his group, where students can actually look at this student-facing tool, and he or she may decide that, and look at this dashboard and say, I have a C in this class, but I have an A. That student can actually look within that dashboard and say, it takes these things for me to make an A based on my cohort or a fellow student within the class, and you can begin to shape students' behavior. So this is a lot going on, don't you think? So no time was wasted. One big project after another. Why is that, UCF? Why is that? Scale and impact. Collective impact has created a sense of urgency. And UCF has said that we're committed to student access and we're committed to student success. Have all of you seen this big book? It's pretty big, isn't it? And what does it say? Big is just the beginning. So I took a quote from this book. A question was asked, why did we, UCF, get big? Here's the response. UCF's long-standing mission to expand access and encourage innovation drove our size and success for decades and continues to advance our growth and distinction. As a university that believes in its access mission, along with having evidence to support it, we have no choice but to go big. But we go big with an expectation of quality and impact. And as we move forward, we rely on the voices of our students and our faculty members serving as guideposts, as do the voices of others. As we move through today's agenda, Dr. Maribeth Ehasz will share information about our students. We'll have an opportunity to hear from two of our students who are experiencing some of the technologies that we do have. And finally, we'll hear from a panel consisting of several faculty members led by Dr. Melody Bowden and Dr. Ryan Goodwin, speaking specifically about curriculum, the GEP Refresh, and also faculty members speaking about predictive analytics. So at this time, I'll turn it over to my partner, Dr. Maribeth Ehasz.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you. So just for, okay, there was another part to the other slide which talked about faculty engagement, but we'll move right on. So let me start by saying hello to all of you. It's really good to see you. This is a big room, and I'm glad to see a big response, so thanks for being here. So to quote Hacken's Law, the belief that understanding alone will stir an organization to action is one of our greatest illusions. So this belief embodies the spirit of our efforts to improve student success. Using data, high-quality advising, strategic financial incentives, enhanced co-curricular experiences, and innovative curricular programs, we are working to reach our students before it's too late to intervene. That is a switch from how we have been chugging along. The only tools available to us were to look backwards, to look to see what was happening for groups of students, what was their experience, and how could we use that information to plan what we do now. Our investment in technology has helped us look currently, look presently, and to look at one student at a time. We're removing barriers and roadblocks by deploying a number of tactics, including triage, assessment, and intervention. So triage, using new technology with the capabilities for advanced search, early alerts, and other identifiers, we proactively find students in need of help instead of waiting for students to come to us with a problem or a concern that is difficult to fix. We're working with them before they go off path. Assessment. New technology provides advisors, in particular, student profiles that show key trends that contribute to positive outcomes, such as GPA patterns, credit accumulation, and student performance in key success marker courses. This helps us create action, campaigns, to help get students back on path. So what you see in front of you are some data from students, student voices, from, first of all, the NSSE, which is the National Survey of Student Engagement. We give this every 3 years at UCF to freshman students and to senior students. And what this shows you, what this chart shows you, is what students are doing when they're meeting and talking with advisors. And really, all the check marks are really good. The check marks show that UCF, in comparison to our peer institutions who also participate in the NSSE, and that would be about 5 of those institutions, we actually are performing better. And this is no surprise. This is no surprise to me. Our advisors are available. Our advisors are providing care. They're informative about rules, regulations, deadlines, academic support services, opportunities to enhance the degree. They're concerned. and they're geared to talking about what's next. There is opportunity, however, in the very final statement, and that really has to do with how many times, what's the frequency that students are getting this information, getting this contact, achieving a connection with our advisors. It's a little bit less than it is for our peer institutions. At UCF, first-year students, about 17% say they really aren't seeing their advisor often to talk about all these issues, to issues particularly about academic interests, course selection, and academic performance, versus 9% for peer comparison institutions. Our seniors report 21% never really discuss these items versus 14%. And I think the question for us for the future, with using the technologies that Dr. Dooley outlined, will advisors be that main source? Or will it be a technology that will help answer some of the questions that students need to know? And will all students be in the same position? Probably not. This slide comes from our graduating seniors survey, the 2016-17 survey. And it asks the question, what are beneficial sources for advising? And you will see that between FTSCs and our transfer students, they're the same sources. First, most students, almost half, really rely on myKnight audit. They need to know, what do they need to finish? myKnight audit does it. And then other students are a major source. I think we talked about this a year ago. Other students are a major source of advice. The more we really have other students know what they're doing, the better this is going to work out. And of course, advisors, college advisors, other friends, and then there are printed materials that a small group of our students work with, about a quarter, maybe 20%. So there are tools that are sources, but it's about half, and so you wonder, what are the other half doing? What are they using as a guide? So the tool that we've invested in is myKnight Star, a success tool and advising resource, primarily for our advisors and also for our faculty. It is not a student-facing tool. The chugging along that we have been doing with retention required that we do something different. And so myKnight Star is that opportunity to do something different. It's a platform that equips advisors, faculty, and staff member with resources and information to provide a coordinated care and support network for our students. Now here's what it, the tool, this is some beginning outcome data. The tool tells us who in a population, in this case it is the 2016-17 FTIC class, who needs the most help? Who's going to be all right? And who's kind of maybe on the fence? Something could be helpful, something maybe not. We found that 472 students in our class of last year were students that really needed attention, needed our support. 2,200 were moderate, and about 3,400 probably would be sailing along. Now, what we found after a semester is that 67% of those 472 students remained in need, remained as students that we really needed to pay attention to. However, here's what I'm happy about. We could use applause for this. 28% of those 472 students moved to moderate need, meaning interventions, actions that we took, allowed that student to learn something about how to be successful, supported that student in their success, and myKnight Star is giving us a different report. One student went on to be sailing. Yay for one student, all right? Retention for that group who need our support the most was 38%. This is not very high. It says they need our help the most. But moderate 89% of these students who started out as needing great assistance, 89% of those who moved to moderate came back. That is a great success. That's why rounded we made 90. One of the reasons. And 100% for that one person, okay? Now, another way we use myKnight Star is to identify students who are about to graduate but may be needing our support, may have a high need for our support. And we've been fortunate since 2013, really through the help of our colleges and our registrar's office, we are identifying those students, and with some seed funding, we are giving small awards, about $1,000. And since 2013, we have given out 265 awards. 245 of those students graduated. KGGI, which we affectionately call Knight's Graduation and Grant Initiative, not only provides that extra nudge, but also identifies other issues that a student is experiencing. Like maybe they haven't completed a success marker class. Maybe they have some other things going on, like they're working too much. It gives us the opportunity to talk about that with a student and make some difference. About 3/4 of those students who received KGGI grants were transfer students who are juggling quite a bit, right? We receive additional funding now. We're going to be able to almost double the number of students that we're able to impact in that last term because of a University Innovation Alliance project and grant that we're receiving that almost doubles those funds. And let me turn the program back to my colleague, Elizabeth Dooley.
Okay, so I mentioned the Pegasus Path. It's a degree map. One of the things we heard from our students through NESE and also through some of the high-impact practices surveys that we've given, and I believe SDES did a survey, and we learned that students do, in fact, want a plan. We also know that students want to see a 360-degree view of the entire academic experience. They want 24/7 mobile access. Why do you think myKnight Audit has received so much interest? Because it's in real time and students can actually touch and feel what's happening in their life. And they also want real-time alert. So what University of Central Florida did, we invested in what we're calling the Pegasus Path. One of the things that's very unique about this, while the required courses are there, you all know that the collective impact states that every UCF graduate will have a high impact practice. We didn't necessarily know what those practices might be. So faculty members, advisors, and some of the academic leaders got together and built out what some of those high impact practices would be for a student majoring in digital media, a student majoring in social work. What's going to make this experience more valuable for the student that they're competitive? That's built into the Pegasus Path. Also, academic milestones. If you're in teacher education, those certification tests are critical. If you are in any accredited program, you need to know when you need to start studying. Why do we have to tell our students all of that? Because how do you know when you don't know? So it's built into the Pegasus Path as a guidance, not as a handicap. So also essential, again, high impact and recommended co-curricular learning. If you want to be a leader, why don't I participate in student government? So all of those things are part of this plan, and it's specialized to the individual student, to the individual learner. So how do we know that this works? When we look at the data and we start looking at those students who have high impact practices, they're more likely to graduate at a higher rate. They're more likely to be retained in the environment. So this tool, which is mobile friendly, is right in the student's hand. Fortunately enough, we've had 2 students to really go into Pegasus Path and play and figure out what it would feel like for a student. The first student that I'm gonna call up is Sarah. Sarah Davenport. Here's the thing interesting about Sarah. Sarah is a transfer student. The other thing that is interesting about her, while I said this tool won't be in the play until the spring semester, she had the guidance. all of these things that we mapped along this continuum, she was given to it because she is also a McNair scholar. Tell your story, girl.
Hi, I'm Sarah Davenport. I'm a McNair scholar here at University of Central Florida. I'm also a transfer student. So when I got here, it was really crazy because, you know, I didn't really know what classes I should be taking. I knew that I transferred here because I wanted to go into graduate school, and that required doing research. So I needed to be at a big research institution where I could get plugged in with different networks and resources. But without really targeted and focused guidance for me, I was kind of just like, okay, so when do I start research, and where do I go, and what kinds of things, you know, what kinds of resources are available for me to figure out what I want to do. I ended up going and finding a professor who's now my faculty mentor, and she's helped me a lot. And I actually got advice from another student who was in undergraduate research. But the Pegasus Pathway is great because if I had had the Pegasus Pathway when I first transferred here, it wouldn't have taken me a year to figure out, like, oh, I needed to start research like the day I actually got here. Because these high impact practices are popping up now on that tool. So the tool has each of my semesters planned out, plus it adds a little slot in the end of my sophomore year, let's say, and it'll say, go see this office to get plugged in for internships. Go see this place to get plugged in for undergraduate research. And so coming in as a transfer student and knowing that I wanted to eventually go to the PhD level, it's really helpful to have these different tools to kind of plan ahead so that I'm not waiting and then having to delay things. And because I knew that I wanted to go in and get my PhD, which I'll be entering a PhD program in the fall, I needed to plan, you know, 8 years ahead, not 2. So the Pegasus Pathway is helping me to plan for the PhD level as well, because as some of you may know, the semester when you're applying to PhD programs and grants and all of these things, it's extremely stressful. So I was watching other McNair scholars with a very heavy course load and then, you know, visiting universities and applying to programs and applying to grants and funding, where I was lucky enough that I had my faculty mentor guide me so that I could have a really light course load, and it made things a lot easier. But with the Pegasus Pathway, you can look at that and say, okay, I'm gonna be applying to PhD programs, finishing my research, doing all this stuff. So maybe I can adjust my schedule and plan ahead for that. So the Pegasus Pathway has been really helpful, and well, it would be really helpful. I've been using it, so it would be really helpful for transfer students and students looking for opportunities in graduate school.
Sarah, can I also share your good news? Where will you be going in the fall?
To Brown University.
So James is a recent graduate, and so he's gonna tell us his story.
Hi, everybody. I just graduated this fall. I was sort of an unconventional student. Took me about 5.5 semesters. Graduated with 160 credits under my belt. Yeah, so I was one of those students, didn't really know what I wanted to do halfway through my degree. I was wishy-washy about it, talked to a couple people. One thing that's going to be amazing about this Pegasus Path tool is that students are going to be able to generate a what-if report of possible majors that they might want to try out. Sort of do, maybe shop the major, I guess, is how I would look at it. Figure out, hey, this is going to be maybe another 3 years for me. These are the benchmarks I need to start thinking about now, maybe applying to internships, job shadowing opportunities, things like this. So it's going to, for students who are sort of on the edge like that, it'll help them either refocus and streamline their college career path, or it'll give them options as far as what the new direction they might want to take. Another thing is it's going to help possibly reduce excess hours for students. You know, 160 credits, I was definitely into excess hours, and when you're into those upper years of your semester, your senior year and junior year, you're sort of running low on the financial aid, and the university's like, all right, let's get out of here, and families are ready for you to graduate and take those photos. So it's going to save students time and money, and it's going to give them the tools to be successful not only in their college career, but thinking beyond, as Sarah's going to do for her awesome PhD degree over there in Brown. So generating more amazing students like Sarah in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. It's good to see you all here. And I always think it's exciting to get the various groups on campus together who are so committed to student success in the same room so that we can have conversations, hear about what's going on in the various areas and so forth. So it's good to see you here. Now, what I'm going to be talking about and what a whole team of folks will be joining me on is this concept of faculty engagement and student success. Now, we know, we have all worked with faculty. We know the critical role that faculty play, whether they're teaching their classes, whether they're coaching students, mentoring students, and so on. Those things that they do as individuals. But one of the most important things that faculty members do to support student success lies in their efforts to design curriculum and to think about and plan in advance the experiences that students will have when they're here at UCF and other places. So I'm excited to really briefly describe to you one example of a curricular rethinking project that's happening collaboratively on our campus, and that is our new look at the general education program. So we're very limited on time here, so I'm just going to hit the highlights. I want you to know that this has been a very community-based kind of activity, and we are open to any kind of feedback. We have gotten colleagues, we've worked with over 100 faculty and staff members and a similar number of students to work on this plan, so we invite you to join that conversation afterwards if you'd like to. Don't try to spell my last name. Just email me at melody, M-E-L-O-D-Y, @ucf.edu. I promise it's easier. So a couple of years ago, the then newly formed College of Undergraduate Studies began looking really seriously at the general education program and thinking about the ways that we could improve it in an effort to really improve student success and opportunities. Now, probably many of you are familiar with GEP or whatever experience of it that you had, but it's a 36-hour requirement for all of our students, and a large part of it that I can't go into detail about, although Google UCF General Education, you can see all of the stuff there as it is right now, so this is a requirement, and a lot of it is mandated by the state. And so there's some parameters, some realities we have to work within as we're thinking about what's best for our students. So we did a few things as we were starting to look at this. Could we advance, please? Okay, the first thing is we looked at the data. And there are lots of things that you can find. It's really exciting and rich when you start looking at the data associated with general education. A few of the things that we've already covered in this conversation in some ways is that some GEP classes can really be a barrier to student success and moving on and doing the things that they want to do. Conversely, though, we find that some GEP classes are the places where people find their path and the places where they find opportunities and discover what they want to do. And so we want to make these experiences as rich and full of opportunity and connections as we can. We found that there are several what I call killer combos, it's also called toxic combos of classes. That means that if you take certain kinds of classes together, your likelihood of problems and of stumbling are higher. And I'm seeing someone nodding, you might have had a killer combo before, is that right? Okay, I know I did when I was an undergraduate. And it would have been nice if someone had identified that based on the data and said, hey, you know, looking at this Pegasus Path, if you want to go to Brown, maybe don't take these two things together. So, and we also found that some of the most important things that our graduates can learn in undergraduate that employers are interested in and everybody who's going to work with them after this can come out of these gen ed classes. It's not just 13th grade. It's not just a collection of hoops that they have to get through, which is unfortunately one of the images that some people have. So the next thing we did was talk to students, of course, and students had a lot of smart things to tell us about this. I always think that that's the place to go, is ask our students what's going on here. So So first of all, this may shock you, but a lot of the students, actually pretty much every student that we talked to said, in concept, they really buy into the idea of general education. It makes sense to them. There's some basic stuff somebody who goes to college should know, so that's not a controversial topic. They also said, however, that the GEP requirements can really feel confusing. I'm getting nods over here, and they can feel like hurdles rather than opportunities. It can feel like hazing. It can feel like just getting through stuff to get through. Wrong word, sorry, Maribeth. But these are some of the words students used with us. Not in the sense that, yeah, okay, all right, I'm dropping it. All right, we also heard from students, I mean, that's a word they use though. We also heard from students that it can feel like a totally separate experience from college, and they really want cohesion in their experience. They want college to feel like it connects and all the pieces fit together. And finally, though, they really are eager to dig into their own field. So the more that they can feel like when they're doing their general education experience, it's connected to the things they're going to do after that, that's really what they're looking for. Can we advance to the next slide? So we focused on integrative learning. We looked at the literature, we looked at the trends across the country, we talked to Provost Whittaker, and one of the things that we landed on was the critical element of integrative learning. And so the general education program that we're working on has some key elements. One of them is emphasizing integrative, as I just said, and active learning. We're also leveraging collaborations with lots of units on campus, including the newly formed Division of Digital Learning, to work on incorporating intriguing pedagogies into general education experience. And so we think that by the time our juniors and seniors get to that level, they're going to expect and demand really exciting kinds of experiences in those classes. We also think that we need a community around the faculty and students who are in general education. I see a lot of my friends out here who I know have taught general education, but have they ever identified really as gen ed faculty? No. Physics faculty, English, writing and rhetoric, I'm seeing some history faculty. So we really have not in the past had a culture where people identified, in addition to their primary discipline, as general education faculty. And why not? It is noble and honorable work. And so we really want to raise it to that level on this campus, recognize what those folks are doing, and have an opportunity to come together and talk about things that need to be discussed. So we're actually planning to start having every semester a general education faculty meeting, and just, try to talk through some of the issues that we're dealing with and share and collaborate. Lastly, and the next thing was faculty collaboration. We are already in these early stages having great success with faculty saying, oh, I want to connect what I'm doing in my anthropology class with what you're doing in your writing class, and so on. And so that's one of the things we're really going to emphasize. Finally, we have a color/logo system. We're going to be identifying 5 competencies and learning and doing outcomes attached to general education. Color coding was one of our early heuristics. We worked through with it. We also are going to have logos attached to them because there are lots of limitations attached to color, including some people have difficulty perceiving it, it doesn't print well, etc. So anyway, but just trust me, we're working on a coding system that will help to make visible what's going on in the general education experience for our students so that they'll have a kind of visual representation of all the different kinds of things that they've done. Next slide. Okay, so we don't have time to drill super deeply with this. And again, we've had the input from over 100 faculty and staff members, so this is still a work in progress, the 5 basic outcomes. But they pertain to, and they do map loosely onto the 5 state foundations that are required for general education. And it's critical that we underscore the fact that they are loosely attached to those because we're still working out details about how faculty will integrate these into their courses. And there's actually, believe it or not, a lot of spicy debate about this conversation. So I don't want to overinvest in that aspect of it. But basically, we have a commitment to helping students to increase their cultural awareness and appreciation, become better speakers and writers and users of digital speaking and writing tools, better understanding of scientific principles and the attending capacity to apply knowledge that comes with that scientific expertise, quantitative literacy, and also the ability to look at information in the world, make sense of it, and evaluate that and apply that in your life. So these are 5 kind of competencies that we're looking at. Next slide. But this is what I want to kind of show you. We're hoping that every general education class and the leaders associated with that will identify at least, so everybody has one sort of automatic area of foundation. For example, I taught ENC 1101 for a million years, and ours is communication. But in every semester, I also incorporated into that cultural and historical conversations and analysis, understanding, et cetera, of text. And so when someone took my composition class, it would have been really great if they could see, oh, you know what? That communication thing, that's also in my history class at AMH 2020, and I can see the connection there. And it's also in my biology class because we're writing lab reports and we're trying to be scientific communicators. And so the hope is that faculty will work together. We're currently working with a team of faculty to develop assessment models where we can actually have these color-coded assessments embedded into courses so that somebody could actually build in a secondary or tertiary area of assessment into their classes, and we're having great conversations around that. We've partnered with QEP, we've partnered with the library, and other organizations on campus to think about how to do this. So that, okay, next slide. I want to recognize 6 faculty fellows who have contributed to this effort for about the last year, and most of them are here today. I think 4 out of the 6 are here today, and a couple of them will actually be joining me up here to speak with you. So Krista Dirksen from biology, you guys want to stand? Joe Gennaro from music is not here today. Amanda Groff from anthropology is not here. Dan Murphy from history. Ram Mohapatra from mathematics, and Deborah Weaver from writing and rhetoric. Yay, they've really done a tireless job of studying models all across the country, looking at the data and the student input that we have here at UCF, and coming together with something that I believe will be a national model, but will undoubtedly fulfill President Hitt's goal of offering the best undergraduate education in Florida, I believe, soon. So I want to turn it over to Ryan, who's going to talk about another kind of faculty engagement and student success.
Thanks. Good afternoon, everyone. So bear with me, I like a lot of things. I like you all, I like the cookies in the back of the room, but I don't like microphones or public speaking. So I'm here today to talk about our Predictive Analytics Innovation Fellows program, which includes a community of scholars interested in using analytical data to advance student learning, success, retention, and graduation at UCF. Fellows pursue projects over 9 months to study UCF students, their learning and academic programs and pathways through the collection and analysis of data describing their students, their activities, and their outcomes. The program is hosted by the Center for Higher Education Innovation and relies extensively on partnership with the Faculty Center for Teaching and Learning, thank you Melody, and with IKM, thank you Linda and Paige for supporting that work. Faculty members from across the colleges work to leverage UCF's extensive data resources and work directly with the folks in IKM to identify their data needs and pursue projects. We feel that this is a really strong way to connect faculty members to existing resources and expand the knowledge base and their ability to analyze data that can potentially affect their teaching, their course design, and outcomes. This was born out of the idea that we have engaged faculty that are really truly motivated by student success, and we could do a better job of connecting them to connecting their interest with existing resources and data. So by putting these folks together in a room with the right partnerships, we've allowed them to explore projects to help them consider student success. Next slide. This year is the inaugural year for the program, and we're excited to work with 6 really brilliant fellows from a range of disciplines, as you can see, and we're lucky to have 2 here with us today that we'll bring up in a minute, Adan and Jackie. The fellows are pursuing varied projects, but I'll highlight the folks that we'll bring up in a minute. Don is using his fellowship to identify latent course sequences that improve or worsen academic outcomes for students in engineering. His work is founded on the hypothesis that there exist academic sequences that improve intangible, hard to measure, indirect, or relevant skills valuable for future academic success. His approach hopes to identify key course sequences, trajectories, and milestones for academic success. Jackie's work understands that about 40% of physics majors at UCF start their academic career at a Florida State college before they transfer here. But the time to degree data indicates that many physics majors, transfer and FTICs, take more than 4 total years to complete their degree. So she is exploring barriers to timely completion of the physics major, starting with their initial engagement with the department through upper-level courses and research experiences. And she seeks to explain how courses taken at the state college impact transfer student success, with an emphasis on access to student-centered introductory physics courses and to identify which courses present the largest barriers to degree completion. So very simple tasks from both of them, but they're deep into it and doing a great job so far. Both of them, and talking to them over the last few months, they've emphasized to me how much pursuing these questions has influenced their thinking and their questions about student success generally. And they're both learning that the numbers and metrics that they see paint a picture, but an incomplete picture, and that holistic and qualitative data is often needed to contextualize or paint a clearer picture of the challenges and the opportunities that they're seeing. Next slide. So we're going to call up Adon and Jackie and some of our GEP fellows as well. So if you could, Dan and Krista, Adele and Adon and Jackie, find your way up to the always awkward chairs. And I have one question first for Adon and Jackie, and that is, what is the connection between predictive analytics and student success in higher education? I know it's a very small question, but.
Okay, is this on? Okay. So I think your summary of my project kind of summarizes my understanding of how the physics department would really like some of this information. And it actually even links up with the Pegasus Path tool that we've been really excited to know what we can see from the faculty end in terms of what students are planning. Because we do all have limited resources, so if it was a perfect world, we would offer all of our classes all of the time. But we can't do that, and physics is a major where things very much build on each other, and they even build on things outside of the department. So there's math classes that people have to take before they can take certain physics courses. And we're really interested in knowing how can we put those together for students that come in at different points so that they're still able to graduate in the least amount of time. And the other thing actually matches with that toxic course thing that Melody was mentioning. Anecdotally, we've seen a lot of students when they make that transition from their introductory courses to the intermediate and upper level courses take on this package of courses that is really more difficult than anything they've ever done before. So it'd be interesting to know what are those courses what are those sequences that students have been successful with, and what are the ones that more frequently make them end up repeating classes that's just adding on to their time. So I think we're looking at it in terms of giving us information to drive our decisions and how we are able to spend our resources.
I'll sort of, hello? So I want to follow up with what Jackie said, because I think ultimately we really care about the same thing, which is making sure our students are prepared to succeed, not just at the next class or the next semester, but really over the entirety of their career. Melody at one point put up a slide for the GEP Refresh, and it listed core skills attached with each course. You know, from my perspective, far too long, we've thought about course sequences and prereqs in terms of the textual knowledge that you read in a book. And the reality is that's not what creates success. At least in engineering, it isn't. Right? So I think for MAC 2211, 2 skills were put up there. Right? One was problem solving and knowledge application. Right? And so my particular research, we talk about latent knowledge. And for me, it is, what are those skills that you need in a class in order to succeed in the next one? Are you, in fact, being taught those skills? And so that's something for me that I felt was really important, and that sometimes we lose and we miss out when we're teaching material. Towards that end, we have Jacob here, who's one of our wonderful advisors in industrial engineering. He really sees what's going on, and he brought to my attention that we have a lot of great IE students who, at the last semester, after doing all their gen ed courses and doing industrial engineering courses, decide to take their final electrical engineering course or thermodynamic course, all right? This is problematic in 2 ways. One, the mathematics that are needed in some of these courses don't align with the curriculum they've been taking in their upper division coursework. So all of a sudden, we have students who need to apply differential equations who might not have been using differential equations for the last 2 years. And so it becomes a little bit of an unstable situation. But that said, a little risky, right? I think that's one thing we see. But that said, something else got pulled out of the data, right? So I started looking at when people were taking their classes in relationship to prereqs and how well they performed. And I started to see that there were 2 ideas that sort of kept popping up. One is relevancy, right? Did you take DiffEQs within, a year of thermo? And the second is academic maturity, okay? Not every student should be taking thermo the next semester after, differential equations. They need time to work into the engineering curriculum to become stronger engineers and stronger problem solvers. And so for me, as I started looking into this data, I think Ryan brings it up, I start having more questions, okay? And we should not look to data to be solving problems, but it should be highlighting issues and bringing out concerns. And then on the flip side, providing evidence for what we're doing is right or wrong. I do want to end with sort of one point in relationship to data. So data for me is always a bit scary. My research comes from the air transportation background. And when I do studies for the FAA, we always had to look at the different airlines and how it affected them. All right. Too often when we do big data studies, we start lumping together groups of students. And what we have to understand is that our students need advocates, okay? And sometimes it is simple interventions that can make big impacts. And we don't always see that in the data. We might say we can make an intervention that will affect 20% of the students, but we miss 5% that might be hiding in there. And so this, for me, is always the caution of working with data, that we look for the big impacts in the mass without remembering the smaller groups. So really, I think as we do these projects, we always try to act as advocates for our students. I think some of us tend to be more attuned to certain groups than others, but really everybody needs a voice when it comes to how this data is used and how it's interpreted. So,
Thank you,
yeah.
Alan. It has been really exciting to work with this team and to hear how they've come, really, I got to throw it in here, integrative. They have come to say, oh, I've got the quantitative, but I need the qualitative assistance with interpreting this. I need to understand some other components. So the collaboration there has been very exciting. I want to introduce Adele Richardson, who is an instructor in the Department of, associate instructor in the Department of Writing and Rhetoric. Forgive me there, Adele. And She was part of a pilot last fall and continuing into the spring using a progress reports tool within myKnight Star, and was going to give us her perspective as someone who's actually used one of these tools from a faculty member angle.
Thank you, Melody. I really did appreciate using this platform because it gives faculty members the opportunity to reach out to students while the problems they're having are still small. So if they're having little things like distraction issues or they just don't quite understand the coursework that they're dealing with, we have time in week 3 or 4 to address the problem instead of week 13 or 14 or even after the final grades are posted. So it's really useful to use too, because everything's all on one page, and you have these options with these drop-down menus, and you can even talk about how many assignments they're far behind on turning in and stuff like that. So, and it's really easy to access. So, I certainly appreciate that, but I really appreciate too the way that it just gives you an opportunity to reach out to students who may have even been ignoring your emails, you know. Because they do that. They're wacky like that. You know, and with an idea of creating success and helping retain students, you know, in my mind, there is really nothing more that tells a student that they're valued and that they belong than being in distress and having somebody reach out to them. So I feel like that's one of the bigger unsung benefits of this particular platform.
Thank you. Okay, so I want to turn to Krista and Dan and ask you about the connection you see between general education and student success in higher education.
First thing I would say is GEP definitely deserves respect, so please respect the GEP. What we have learned in this process is that a lot of the things we do already are great, but a lot of the things we need to improve on, we need to work on better. The first thing, obviously we all know, the GEP courses are the bridge to the majors. These are the gateway courses that really inspire the students to go for the majors they want. But it's also more. The GEP is the first step in the professionalization of our students. It's the first step in getting our students to become prepared for the eventual career they will have, to become prepared for the civic engagement they will take part in their lives. There's no reason to wait on getting and preparing them for that until they are majors. The other thing that I think is very important, and this is kind of something our current QEP project celebrates. Some of you may know about the tuning project it celebrates. What you can do in the GEP courses is get students to start articulating what they're learning better. And that's something I think we all could do better in our courses, but get them to explain what they're learning, why they're learning it, what they're going to do with it. This is the kind of thing that the parents want to know. This is the kind of thing that the legislators want to know. This is the kind of thing the teachers want to know. And sometimes I think we take that for granted a little bit too much. But finally, I think the bigger issue, and this is something that's been said many, many times, is the GEP program really makes our students become better global citizens. And in the 21st century, that's what we need much more of. It's kind of trite to just say we want them to be citizens of the world, but they are citizens of the world, and they need to understand that from an early level and become prepared in what they're teaching. So while you're increasing your respect for GEP, think about these connections that I think we really need to push harder on.
Okay, and I'm going to kind of, I think, follow up on some of that with a little bit more specific examples. You know, we talk a lot about this in our own little GEP fellow group. And, you know, I was somebody who teaches Bio 1, you know, the big Bio introductory biology class. And as Melody kind of mentioned before, I never thought of myself as a GEP instructor. I just thought, well, I'm hoping I'm catching, you know, the bio majors in that class with the awareness that the vast majority of them weren't bio majors or weren't pre-med. They were there because it was their GEP. And, you know, I'm guilty of thinking, well, you know, I've got to get everybody through this class as best I can, but, you know, some of them just might not make it, but that's, you know, that's the way it is. And that was sort of that old school way of thinking. And I have to say that my participation in this program has completely, changed that thinking. And even just the idea, I really want to stress program. You know, that's something we talk a lot about, that it is a general education program and not these disconnected classes. So to kind of echo also and sort of follow a little bit what Dan was starting to say, when we look at success for the students in the program, that's definitely an important part in the tracking of them and making sure they're graduating on time and all those metrics we've already seen the data for today. That's all part of success. But we also want to look at the bigger success past graduation. And when you talk to employers and you talk to the people who are saying, we want our future employees coming to us with those more intangible skills. And maybe, yes, we say we want this certain major to apply for this job, but bottom line, they want people who can solve problems no matter what the problem is. They want them to apply the knowledge, maybe to new and novel situations. Most of our students, if you think about how many careers, they may have different jobs, different careers throughout their entire life, and they think they know what they want to do right now, but 5, 10, 15 years, jobs are going to change, needs are going to change, and the skills they learned in their major, maybe that'll help them, but these larger skills that the GEP can provide is probably going to give them better success, and we do know that's what the employers are looking for. So that's kind of how we think about, the introductory kind of ideas of all the different pillars, and keeping those ideas in mind, being able to communicate no matter who you're talking to, being able to be that global citizen. Because, I tell my Bio 1 students, I don't expect you all to become biologists. We don't need that many biologists probably, so that's good, but I don't expect you to be scientists, but I want you to be biologically literate. I want you to be scientifically literate. So when you find yourself, in the voting booth, or deciding, who they might, want to donate money to some cause, or trying to analyze some kind of climate change data, or whatever it might be, that they can remember some of the skills that they learned in their Bio 1 class, and maybe hopefully some of their other classes, and that, that's part of the goal, is to get them to be, kind of global citizens that way.
That's great, thank you. The next question is for all of the faculty members on the panel, and it is a little bit of a sticky wicket, I'll just tell you. It is a tricky question. How do you see the faculty role in student success changing in the next 5 or 10 years? Let's start, Adele?
Sure, I'll go for it. I'm game. Well, one of the first things I feel like we're going to have more of an online presence with our students. So being able to assess when they're starting to fall through the cracks initially is going to become a little bit more important now. I mean, as it is now, if you're face-to-face in a class, you can see if they're struggling. Or they'll tell you, sometimes they just look in fear at you, like, what is happening? So I think having these predictive analytics that we're using in here can kind of start giving the heads up. It's a shame if somebody would fall through the cracks just because they're in an online class. And with the online classes too, there's the opportunity for even bigger and bigger classes. So you have that much less time with students. So being able to somehow identify that somebody's in some level of distress, I think is going to be even more crucial as we move forward, for sure. Next.
So in physics, we're kind of unwilling to give up the time with the students, but I think that really becomes on us to differentiate what we do when we are in contact with the students from what they're able to get online. So I think my take on this is really that we really have to focus into this coaching mode and thinking about what are those skills that students can really only develop fully if we're right there with them, watching them do it. And what is the stuff that they can do outside of class so that we have the most time in class possible to spend on those kinds of activities.
So I joked with Melody and Ryan before this that I tend to be a little bit of a happy pessimistic. So I am very cautious about what I think my role is going to be in the next 5 to 10 years, especially when it comes to student success. I think Sarah here is a wonderful example of success, and it's marked by an absolutely phenomenal program, which is McNair Scholars. I mean, the students that I saw do that in my undergraduate institution all went on to grad school and do wonderful things. In my classes, I teach 2 classes, one which went from 50 students a semester to 125 students a semester. I do not have the level of contact and engagement I would like with my students. I understand we're transitioning to a role that, an online world for our classes where access is everything. And I think, the provost has highlighted many of the successes that we've made in this area in providing access and success for our students. But what I want the university to start thinking towards is we have built academic excellence at the undergraduate level. How do we start pushing those students up to the graduate level? How do we do that in an online world? Okay, so I'll just give a quick example of this. I think making engaging material online is certainly possible. I'm not the best at it because I grew up with chalkboards and I'm still adjusting to the online world. I make videos for my students and they love it. But my lectures are sometimes break, right? We talk about simulation, we talk about optimization and its place in the real world. But every year I make sure to stop and talk about graduate school. And one of my great prides is that just within a year, I've had about a half dozen students who either decided to do the BS/MS program or apply to graduate school. And these are not necessarily the 4.0s. I have 3.0s, who understand graduate school is not just for the best and the brightest. Graduate schools are what make you, getting a master's degree is what makes you a great engineer that will succeed in the workplace. I'm apprehensive that those students I might not be able to engage in the same way that I do now, and that I even still struggle with. And so I'm not an education researcher, but I hope that that question is one that's open and deeply thought about at this university, especially because we are, again, we've opened up access to a wide variety of students that are doing incredibly well, and now we need to start thinking about not only serving them as an undergraduate institution, but pushing them towards graduate school, not just at Brown, but even here, okay? Here. UCF's a great school, we have great faculty. And so I just put that there. I'm a little bit cautious.
Okay. I think this one's working. Okay. What I think, because the original question, just to rephrase it again, was, what's our maybe a changing faculty role in the next 5-10 years? I do feel like, we do have to make an adaptation or change. I think we need to sometimes as faculty let go of our ideal idea of what a student should be. And I know I'm guilty of this. I'll say it, at least in my head. I cannot believe that student just asked me to do that. I would never in my day as an undergrad have expected that. And yet, the students are different now, and we should be different too. And maybe on the flip side, we need to change and adapt. That kind of gone are the days where we're the expert in the room and we're just throwing out our knowledge and hope they catch it. That's a hard thing to let go to, because that is how I would be willing to bet most of us learned and when we were in school. And I know, as much as I try, I've been to so many wonderful faculty center events and workshops about active learning, and I have tried, to make changes, and I've always felt, okay, I'm a little half-hearted on it, and I still at the end of the day think, I did my best. Maybe some still didn't get it, but that's, what I tried. And then just as a recent example, just last week, I went to a faculty center-sponsored workshop on active learning. We had Scott Freeman from University of Washington, who's an expert in STEM field of active learning, and he gave his workshop, and there were a lot of things I already knew, how to use clickers, how to use, the techniques in the classroom. But there was one new thing that really hit me, and it was his data. We've seen a lot of data today, and he showed data from his own papers and from other people, actual results of student success and when faculty did active learning the right way, particularly for students from economically disadvantaged backgrounds, that there were real significant changes in their success. And I thought, well, as a scientist, I can't ignore that. I can't be complacent and just saying, okay, I did my best and try. I really need to start working, because that was so compelling, to make those changes. And I still think, obviously the student has to engage in that too. It's a two-way street. But I do think, moving forward, we really don't know 5-10 years from now, what other technologies are going to, we can certainly keep changing. But I don't feel like I can just do same old, knowing that data is out there. So.
Dan, you want to wrap us up real quick? We're getting
Sure, just really quickly. I mean, at first I agree with everything my colleagues said, but I'll say it this way. I'll say it this way too. I'm in mid-career faculty. I've been teaching for about 15 years at colleges or universities, and sure, I respect the caution. I respect the adaptability. We need to do that, but I'm really optimistic. I mean, we have tools at our disposal now that we didn't have 15 years ago that have changed my entire approach to teaching and student learning. I want to embrace experiential learning. I want to embrace teaching my students outside of the classroom as much as I do inside of the classroom. I want to use technology. I want to expand or change the way I look at my students. Because the reality is we have students that come from very diverse backgrounds. And by backgrounds, I mean ethnic, cultural, and economic. And that's something we need to pay a little bit more attention to, especially as faculty, because sometimes I don't think we do that. So we have a lot of challenges. It's kind of daunting, but hearing my colleagues say these things, it doesn't make me reticent. It actually makes me very excited about the future. So I'm quite optimistic.
Okay, great, thank you.
All right. Questions for our panelists or our leads here? Or comments? Were you intellectually provoked? Or stimulated? That's a little... Okay.
I'm Frank Kuyava in the chemistry department. I also teach geology. One of you mentioned something about same old, same old. I think one of the things we have to be cautious of is that although the material may seem the same to us year after year, this is the first time a lot of students are encountering this. And so we've got to watch out that we don't skip some really important things that they need and that we'll see for the first time. I know that this past semester, a couple of students, after we covered something I thought was kind of dull, were saying how excited they were with the course. And it took me back. So I think that we need to make sure that we're not throwing out the baby with the bathwater, and that when we make changes, we are building on the solid foundation we already have.
Thank you. I just want to echo a word you just used that I really appreciate, and that is foundational. So often, I have in the past heard people talk about general education courses as gateway courses, maybe gateway to a major. I think about them, I think many of us do, as really the foundation upon which the majors are built. And also they're the part of the T that allows you to take deep knowledge in a discipline and apply it across new and novel situations. Thanks for the foundational work. Yeah, Richard.
Thank you. It's very inspiring to hear all this information. As somebody who has children that will be starting high school in the near future, I was wondering what efforts are being made by the university to communicate all of these efforts that UCF is making downstream to the high schools, to the advisors, so that maybe there can be a shift in how students are advised before they get to UCF, if anything.
Do you want to take that one, Elizabeth? Or?
Yeah, I'll take
Okay.
it. One of the collective impact pieces that we're looking at from thematic Team 1 is how do we help to engage the metro region, starting with high school students. So we don't have the answer. Who asked that question?
Richard.
We don't have the answer right now, but there's a lot of intentionality. We just charged a team today to begin talking about how we engage with K-12 in terms of being ready. But I could tell you from a digital perspective, they're far ahead of me. But at the same time, we are going to bring some intentionality to that. And thank you for that question.
And as soon as the UCF orientation team heard about Gen Ed Refresh, they were on it and working to incorporate it into what we do with our students who start with us. So it's going to be early and often once they get here.
In the back of the room.
Hi, I'm Shelley Massini. I teach integrated business. And I guess related to that, the majority of my students are transfer students, and they come in with a degree, an AA degree. So I'm wondering, with the General Ed Refresh, what conversations are you having with our Direct Connect partners to make sure that we are trying to narrow that achievement gap?
Thank you.
So we're primarily focusing at this point in those conversations with Valencia, but we are incorporating all of the articulation kinds of conversations that we have across campuses into the conversation. So Valencia colleagues were meeting. We had a couple of them come to Winter Conference and talk a lot with our colleagues about how general education works in the state colleges and what kinds of connections and disconnections we see. It was a really exciting conversation, and we're looking forward to more of those. We have been focusing very much on the UCF experience because, frankly, there's just so much to do there. But we've had constantly an eye on the idea of what does this mean for transfer students. You can't have a conversation at UCF without thinking about that population. And so what we're really excited about, I think I speak for all the fellows, is seeing those competencies and those foundations that we're building in general education moving up into the junior and senior years, because they're just really good basic stuff for what a graduate should experience. And so we think there'll be opportunities to really bring transfer students in that way. We're at early stages of working with the partners, but some conversations are going.
And I want to add to that, from the math department's perspective, we've already started interdepartmental faculty collaboration. And so, for example, we have UCF faculty members going to Seminole State and Seminole State faculty members coming to UCF to do some observations, because we're asking the question, and we're talking about those foundational courses in math. We're asking the questions, is it anything beyond learning outcomes? Are there environmental things that we need to be cognizant of as we start working through the systems and making sure the seamless transition takes place?
I want to thank you for the question, because it is possible that if we don't do that, we will widen the gap rather than closing the gap and make it a larger phase shift for students when they get here. So I want to thank you for your leadership. And also for those that are involved in the downtown campus, it gives us a acute platform that we can work together with, that then we can bring that back on a broader basis. But to your point, it's not only about us. You know, it's very much about our partners as well.
Hello, Joseph Powell. I teach 2 classes, and I want to talk about, specifically you talked about course integration, and I think that is actually key, the cross-pollination, if you will, because some of the 2 courses I teach, kinesiology and human injuries, they deal with a lot of physics. Sometimes they deal with just understanding the scientific method, and I think the courses that these students have, as you know, in the lower level courses, if they understand how to apply those when they get to courses such as these, then the coursework is easier, and they'll actually develop a better understanding to do what you guys have talked about when they meet employers, they're able to apply this knowledge to scenarios they've never seen before. So.
Yep. Thank you. Excellent comment. I'm so excited that there's a community of proud faculty teaching general education for me. It's great.
Oh, hello. Thank you guys all for being here. So I really like this seminar. I'm all about student success because I was one of those students that really struggled in the classroom. I went from a 2.0 and am I graduating this year with a 4.0, and that I'm very proud of. I'm really proud of that. And I came from a very different background. So I grew up in foster care. So nurturing my education was pretty difficult, and navigating the system here was pretty hard. But I utilized every resource as a student that was available to me. So you guys talked a lot about high impact practices. And I just had a question for the panelists. Have you guys ever seen or talked to a student that embodied a student-led initiative that led to you guys maybe motivating you to repurpose your curriculum to these high-impact practices? Thank you.
Does someone want to take that? The question was, do you have an example, or have you seen a student-led initiative that's changed the way you teach? Jackie's really, your gears are really going there.
Yeah, so I teach in the physics department, and my background is in physics education research, so I teach a lot of classes related to getting people into teaching, and I think it's close to what you said. So we had a teacher come to, it actually brings in a few things. We had a teacher come to us who was teaching high school physics and had absolutely no physics background. Sorry, oh my goodness, had no physics background. And she wanted some help. And we happen to have a learning assistant program in physics. So we take undergrads and give them a just-in-time pedagogy training and stick them in our classes to help their faculty teach their peers better. And we had a few who were retaking that seminar that goes along with that, and we said, what would you do if we asked you to help this teacher? And they worked out a way that they were working with the teacher to help teach her about some of the equipment she had access to in her classroom and define lessons for her. And it worked so well that now we do it in every single pedagogy course as a service learning thing. So the success that those students have, the principal down there really even appreciated it, and that gave us a lot of motivation to make sure that that's something that we have ongoing happening in our physics pedagogy courses.
Okay, help me thank our panel. Really appreciate it, our speakers. And we'll wrap this up. First of all, I want to thank everybody that's been watching at their desk or remote sites. We typically have between 100 and 150 additional friends in the room with us while we're doing this. I also want to remind you that the Marchioli Collective Impact Award deadline will be March 9th. Okay, so that's coming up. If you have a nomination to make for that, please do that. Our upcoming Provost Forum, as I mentioned earlier, is Funding and Philanthropy. That will be on April 3rd, right? Yep, in this room at 3 o'clock. And again, there will be cookies. Let's see, and then we have several upcoming college visits scheduled. And as you know, this is the opportunity to go from this forum into all of these measures, but at a college level. So we look forward to seeing you and have a very good day. Thank you.